Nelson's Retribution. Sacramento State is a prestigious university residing in California. Founded in 1947, the school is home to tens of thousands of students from all walks of life, all of whom adore and venerate the president, a towering figured man named Ronald Nelson. He guided the university justly for many years and was beloved by the students. President Nelson is hard at work with his staff preparing for the homecoming game when one of his assistants comes up to him. She has a grim look on her face. "What is it, Sally?" President Nelson asks worriedly. "Sir, it's your son. I'm sorry to tell you, but your son is dead," Sally, the assistant, says. What? What are you talking about? I just saw him last night," President Nelson says, looking more distraught by the second. "What happened?" "The hornets, sir. He was stung to death by a nest of hornets." President Nelson falls to his knees and begins to sob. His son, his heir, gone. He has nothing left. All he has left is anger. The scene cuts to the night of the homecoming game. Thousands of Sacramento State students fill the stadium to the brim. So many people it looks as though the entire school is there. In attendance are two psych majors, Gabe and Daniel, alongside several of their friends. The night gets kind of wild, and after more than enough shots, the group is slurring their words and too drunk to behave sober. At halftime of the thrilling game, the group splits up to get food, drinks, or vomit right outside the gates. Sammy. Daniel and Gabe were on the way to the restroom when Gabe discovered that his phone got lost in all the halftime commotion. It likely fell behind the bleachers, so the two sneak their way under to retrieve it. On the other side of campus, President Nelson enters Douglas Hall. He slowly enters room 104 and heads straight to the podium. He moves the podium over, revealing a hatch underneath. He opens the hatch, revealing a secret passageway. Going down the dark pit takes several minutes, but Nelson doesn't matter. What's down there will help cure him of this disease called sadness. The room at the bottom is unlike anything else in Sacramento State. It's a whole room filled with giant vats, each one having a deformed human within it, unmoving. He walks through the freakish creatures till he reaches the end of the room where a suit lay before him. The suit had been charging for years, slowly gaining more and more energy from the treadmills from the well. Clad in Sacramento State green and gold, the suit is impenetrable, can take Nelson into the air, and has a dozen hornet-embalmed weapons across his arms and chest. The voice of famous former alumni Tom Hanks can be heard guiding President Nelson's every movement. He spent years imagining how this suit would save his students from sudden chaos. But because of the hornets, President Ronald Nelson is going to use this hornet to take out the hornets. Nelson flies off towards the stadium to wreak havoc on the unsuspecting students. He arrives at the center of the football field and the students begin to cheer him on. He doesn't react. Instead, he lifts his hand and an energy blast begins to form. The crowd starts to quiet down, unsure of what they're witnessing. President Nelson fires off the energy blast, destroying a quarter of the stadium in one blow. Like God from within, he creates two more energy blasts, sending them to the semifinals and end zones, each with the incredible finality causing the death and wounding of everyone within 50 meters of the blast. The hornet lands in the middle of the stadium with incredible speed. The students begin to panic, diving in every direction, screaming in terror. While this is happening, Gabe and Daniel find themselves heading back to Gabe's lemon of a car. Somewhere in the commotion, he dropped his car keys, so they had to stay put. Gabe pinches his forehead and pushes back his hangover migraine. The two have little going for them, but have caught a moment to breath. Gabe whispers a quick prayer before Daniel interrupts him. "There is no God. It's up to us to figure this shit out." Gabe cuts him off. "There is a spare in here somewhere, but you gotta make sure neither of us gets seen while I search." Daniel keeps his eyes out for Nelson. As Gabe clutches his spare from behind the seat, Daniel spots a shadowy figure in the distance. The figure doesn't move, but Daniel is certain it's the president. He whispers, "Gabe, I think I see the president." Gabe takes the keys in his fingers and starts the car. They zoom off, but before they can get to the entrance, President Nelson lands on the hood of the car, destroying it. Due to the car being a lemon, only Gabe's airbags go off, saving him from death. Daniel's, however, doesn't go off. He flies through the windshield. The entire time he's praying to the god of atheism to save him. Luckily for him, he lands on a person breaking his fall. The person is revealed to be none other than his close friend Sammy. She's not as used to the brunt of forces as Daniel is. She's light as a feather and doesn't survive the attack, taking a lot of damage in the process. Survivors are pulling over onto the roadside to be of the downed neo-Nazi. Daniel cradles his dead friend in his arms. He lets out a cry to the heavens. President Nelson steps off the destroyed car and approaches the crying man. Nelson laughs hysterically at the sight. "What are you laughing at?" Daniel says. "Oh, nothing, I just killed your friend, that's comedy gold." Daniel grits his teeth in anger. He's about to get up to attack when out of nowhere Jeff, Sammy's boyfriend, arrives out of nowhere with a crowbar. He slams it down on Nelson's head. Nelson is clearly unharmed, but it still dazes him for a second. Jeff screams, "You killed my girlfriend!" Daniel jumps up to grab Jeff, but Nelson grabs him by the collar and shoves him to the ground. Nelson lifts his arm at Jeff and begins to charge another energy blast. Daniel gets up to push Nelson's arm away from Jeff, but Nelson punches Daniel, throwing him several yards away. Daniel stands up and starts pushing Nelson again, but Nelson grabs him and throws him to the ground. Nelson kicks Daniel in the head, breaking it. Daniel lays on the ground, groaning. Nelson looks down at Daniel and laughs. "I see what you did there with the God thing, but you didn't count on me having the hornets and the suit." Daniel groans. The what It's clear that Daniel has sustained brain damage from the attack. He mutters to himself, "Where is Nelson? Where 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 is Nelson?" President Nelson smiles at the sight of the now retarded man. He looks over to Jeff, who is still distraught from being thrown to the ground. Nelson lifts his arm and fires a powerful energy blast at him, turning him, most of the parking lot and several buildings into dust. He looks around and sees the destruction he's caused. He sees Gabe crashed in his car, Jeff turned to dust, and Daniel turned retarded. He smiles to himself and flies away to kill more innocents around the college. As the authorities arrive, they see the destruction that Nelson has caused. President Nelson is nowhere to be found. They find Gabe and Daniel unconscious. The authorities approach Gabe and ask, "Are you okay? Do you need an ambulance?" Gabe says, "No, I'm okay. I don't need an ambulance, but please check on my friend." They check on Daniel and find him severely injured. They rush him to the hospital. As they load him into the ambulance, he looks into the eyes of his close friend. Gabe gives him a wink. "I'm okay, don't worry." Daniel gives a small smile. As the ambulance drives off, Gabe watches it go and says, "But who's gonna save me now?" Explosions go off in the distance. It's clear Nelson's reign of destruction is still happening. Gabe realizes a lot of his friends are probably in the wreckage of the stadium. He runs back and looks for anybody he can find. As he runs through the wreckage, he sees 2 bodies. He rushes over and pulls them up. "Damn," he says, "those can't be my friends. Come on, get up." The bodies slowly come to consciousness. One is a middle-aged white man. The other is his Linda female friend. "Oh my God, it's..." The white man says, "Gabe, is that you, my boy?" "Professor Rick Gower?" Gabe cries. He realizes the man is not old at all, but is severely aged from being in a terrorist attack. Linda the Broken begins move. She weakly raises her arm at Gabe and says, "Why, Gabe? Why?" Gabe tries to explain to the dying professor. "I'm sorry, Professor, I didn't know." "You didn't know," the professor says. "I didn't know that putting that hornet's nest in his son's back seat would lead to this. It was supposed to be a joke," Gabe cries. "You didn't mean it," Professor Rick Gower says. "I know that, but all this death is because of your action." Gabe looks at Linda, who's barely able to move, and says, "Please, just forgive me. I didn't mean to kill you. It's too late," Professor Rick Gower says. "She's finished. Don't apologize to someone who's already going out." Gabriel thinks that Rick Gower is consoling him, but the professor continues. "Apologize to me." He grabs Gabe by the throat. "I watched my colleagues die, and you're gonna pay for it." Gabe is watching his lights go out as he slowly reaches his hands up, brushes it against Rick Gower's sides. Rick Gower realizes he's being tickled by Gabe and lets go to guard himself, but it's too late. Gabe has punched him in the chest. Gabe raises his fist and prepares to punch the professor, but Linda stops him. "Don't," she says. "I forgive you." "Thank you," Gabe says. The light in Linda's eyes goes out. Her body falls limp. She's dead. Gabe stands up from the rubble, tears in his eyes. "Get back here, little fuck," Rick Gower says. Gabe says nothing and walks away to look for more survivors. He stumbles on broken glass, blood, and bodies. He eventually finds one. It's Ashley. "Ashley," he says. "Ashley." "Hey," Ashley says. "Look, I'm hurt, but I'm fine. We're both fine." "No," Gabe says. Ashley stares at her bloody legs and says, "You gotta think positive." While staring off into an imaginary camera, laugh tracks ensue. "It's okay," Ashley says. "We'll get through this." "It isn't okay," Gabe says. "Those people were my friends." "What?" Ashley says. "Anyways," she says joyfully. She tries to change the topic to something completely unrelated to the situation at hand to talk about one of her quirky adventures. "So one time, get this, I got really drunk and woke up next to a handsome stranger, but I was too drunk to realize he wasn't a stranger, and I named him Brad Pitt, and—" "Ashley," Gabe says, "we can't focus on that right now. Everyone's dead." "What?" Ashley says. "Anyways." "No, listen," Gabe says. "I need to tell you something important." "Okay," Ashley says. "Go." Gabe says, "I'm the one who put the Hornets in his son's back seat. I can't watch everyone die for me. I need you to take this seriously." "Oh," Ashley says. "So you're admitting it?" "Yes," Gabe says. "I'm the one who did this." "Okay," Ashley says. "So, that's it," Gabe says. "I'm sorry. I know you're going to think I'm really stupid, but—" "Nah," Ashley says. "I think you're totally cool." "Really?" Gabe says. Ashley says, "I think I know a way to stop Nelson's suit from working, but—" Ashley's thought is interrupted by a sudden meteor-like figure crashing through ground beneath them. As the dust settles, Gabe finds Ashley hidden behind a trash can. Neither can say a word before the figure settles beside Ashley. She says in a monotone voice, "Let me guess. He's right behind me." Laugh track ensues. He begins loading another energy blast until the power from his suit gives up for a split second. Gabe notices the opening and tackles the president. The two stumble a few feet away and Nelson has taken his first bit of damage. The Hornet's lights begin to flicker and return. Before Nelson has a chance to regather himself and his suit, Ashley grabs Gabe and leads them away. They are safe, if only for the moment. Gabriel and Ashley stand motionless for a moment, covered in dust and debris. "Oh my God," Ashley says. "That was close." "Yeah," Gabe says. "That was close." The scene cuts to the hospital where the now retarded Daniel is at. He's currently out of surgery and is currently resting in bed. He hears a knock on the door, but his retarded brain is unable to respond. In walks Professor Nifsend, Daniel's married professor who he's having an affair with. Nifsend walks in with flowers in her hands. "How's my favorite student?" Daniel opens his mouth to respond, but the only thing that comes out of his mouth is drool. "Oh no, my poor darling," Nifsend says, taking a handkerchief out of her pocket and wiping the drool from his mouth. She puts her hands on his cheek, a cheek she has loved passionately. "Daniel, my pet, I love you." She tries to kiss him, but his lips are too wet. "Daniel," Nifsend says, "I love you. You will always be my pet." "Daniel," Nifsend says, "I love you. I will always love you." Daniel stares up at the ceiling, a frown on his face. "Daniel," Nifsend says, "I love you." Daniel begins to cry. Daniel continues to cry. Nifsend puts her hand on his cheek once again. "Daniel," Nifsend says, "I will always love you." Nifsend puts her hand on Daniel's crotch, but to her dismay, there's no reaction. He's too brain damaged to feel any sort of feelings outside of dumbness. She stares at his penis for a moment, then lets her hand fall to his side. She walks to the bed and sits on the edge. "I wish we could stay here forever," Nifsend says. "I wish I could let people know about us. I wish I could leave my husband, but I'm too much of a coward," she cries. Daniel stares at her, smiling sadly. "I wish we could stay together forever," Nifsend says, "but I can't live a half-life. I'll always miss you." Daniel says, "I love you too, Professor." "Daniel," Nifsend says, tears in her eyes seeing that Daniel's suddenly regaining parts of himself. I understand. I really do," Daniel says, his English accent starting to return. "I understand," Daniel says. "I do." Daniel says, I understand. Nifsen sits there for a moment, contemplating her life, thinking about where she wants things to go. She knows she has no future with Daniel yet. She knows that if he stays breathing, she'll always want to go back to him, retarded or not. So she does what she needs to do. She takes a pillow out from under Daniel's head and puts it over his face. He struggles for air, but his retarded arms won't let him protect himself. Just as he's about to lose consciousness forever, someone barges into the hospital. It's none other than Professor Myers, and he's angry. Where have you been? He yells. Nifsen says, where have you been? Nifsen tries to respond, but Myers backhands her across the face. Where have you been? Myers raises his hands up to strike Nifsen again when Daniel from the bedside shouts, Coward! Myers leaves Nifsen to interrogate this arrogant piece of shit. Who are you to speak to me this way, retard? You're no mem-man, Myers. You're no mem-man, Myers. This angers Myers enough to strike Daniel, his arm shockingly easy to hold back. Daniel holds on to Myers' leg and crushes what's left of its bones into tiny pieces. Daniel has developed retard strength. Myers! Nifsen shouts. Don't hurt him! Myers lets go of Daniel and inspects the broken limb. Myers realizes that every bone and leg is broken, even the parts Daniel didn't touch. He squeezed his knee so hard even his toes broke. What is this power? Myers cries. Is it possible? Is this the retard Freud prophesied? Is he the legendary retard superhuman? I don't know, Nifsen says. You tell me. Myers says, I had visions many moons ago of Freud. He talked about a prophesized hero of retarded proportions that was destined to stop the green and gold terror. I dismissed it at the time, but this can't be the retarded Freud, can it? No, Nifsen says. No, this has to be. But how? Myers asks. What's going on here? What are you talking about? What terror? The hit must have done damage to his memory. Myers begins to sob. Why did it have to be this way? Nifsen looks on with confusing. That's not all that Freud said. He said that in order for the strength to remain, a sacrifice would need to be made. Nifsen scoffs. What kind of sacrifice? The strength relies on the power of his id. The Oedipus complex only completes at the death of a mother figure, and I know he was your pet. Nifsen retorts, It's not like that, Leonard. I know it is. I know everything. I watched it happen in my mind's eye. This won't be easy for me. Myers takes a hospital syringe and plunges it against Nifsen's neck several dozen times. Daniel watches in horror while feeling strength flow through him at the same time. When the sacrifice is complete, the two walk out of the well. They are soon confronted with the destruction that the green and gold terror has left behind. Myers is visibly shaken, and he's even more scared of Daniel now. Daniel, Myers stammers. Daniel. Hush, Leonard, Daniel commands. Just hush. The two men walk through the war-torn campus. Bodies lay everywhere. In the distance, Myers even notices several tanks torn to shreds. He pieces together that the military must have come through to put an end to the destruction, but President Nelson, the green and gold terror, was far too powerful for them. Was this the terror? Daniel asks. Why would he destroy the campus? This makes no sense. It was him, Myers says. I don't understand why, though. We must be strong, Daniel says. We'll figure it out. We must, Myers says. We must. The scene cuts back to Gabe and Ashley, who are at a different part of the campus. They came upon the aftermath of a massacre. Bodies lay everywhere. Gabe begins to cry, but Ashley consoles him. They hear a noise coming from a garbage can. It's the sound of muffled moaning. The two cautiously approach the garbage can, prepared to see the worse. Gabe slowly grabs the lid and takes it off, revealing it to be their classmate, Ian. He is completely naked and masturbating. He is also covered in blood. Oh my God! Ashley says joyfully. It's Ian! Ian is someone Ashley always had a strong feelings for, but he always rejected her. He had told her that it had nothing to do with her as person, but more because he doesn't date anyone over the age of 15. She didn't care, as long as he didn't tell her that it's because of her race. Ian! Ashley says. You're alive! I can barely move, Ian says. I was shot at least 3 times. Where's the rest of them, the others? Gabe asks. Dead! You can't mean that! Where's Nancy, Michaela, Karen? They can't all be dead! They are. They were killed. The green and gold terror? No. What then? I, you did it, Gabe shouts. You killed them. Why? Ian begins to get erect and laughs. He points the bloody digit of his index finger at Gabe. You should be thanking me, Ian says. They weren't nice to me. They were all looking down on me. They even called me an N-word. Yes, Ian says. That's right. They called me a N-words. You killed them because you thought you were better than them, Gabe screams. You monster! Monster? Ian says. Ian goes on a Ben Shapiro-like rant. I didn't kill Michaela because she's Mexican. She didn't speak English well. I didn't kill Nancy because she's an illegal. I didn't kill Karen because she's a Jew. I killed them because they deserve to die. They deserve to die. They should have died a long time ago. They're disgusting. They're arrogant. They don't deserve to live. They didn't deserve to die. They did no harm to you. They were good people. They were ugly. They had bad skin. They weren't human. They were monsters. And I was a monster too. I was a monster too, but... Before he could finish his sentence, Ashley bludgeons Ian over the head with a fire extinguisher. I'm sorry, Ashley says, but this had to happen. Ashley, he killed them, Ashley says. He's the monster. Gabe gets the gun out of Ian's pocket. He holds it in his hand. What are you gonna do, Gabe? Ashley asks. I'm gonna kill him, Gabe says. And then... What then? Then I'm gonna kill myself. There's no point in living. What? I'm what set President Nelson on this rampage. I'm just as responsible for all this death. After he's put down, I need to be next, Gabe responds. No, Ashley says. You can't. I can. I have to. No, Gabe, it's wrong. Please. I can't. I have to. I can't do this anymore. The world's no longer a place worth living in. It's not your fault. It is. It's all my fault. It's all mine. It's not your fault. None of it's your fault. None of this is your fault. None of this is on you. None of it. You can't kill yourself. You can't. I will. Gabe walks away and back towards the stadium. He knew he'd eventually find the president there. Ashley gave Gabe some space, following closely behind. As the two make their way through campus, Ashley seemingly wants to talk about everything but the terror, but Gabe isn't going to let himself forget. The two arrive at the Grumpy Mule. Since things have calmed down, he feels the weight of his hangover kicking in again. A cup of coffee would settle that. The two search the area when they hear the sounds of footsteps approaching. A familiar voice. Gabe can hear the anger in his voice. Where the hell have you been? I haven't heard from you since you dropped the Hornets off. Have you seen this shit? Where have you been? You were supposed to call me. Gabe doesn't even have to turn around to recognize the dragging footsteps and feeble voice of Meg Patterson. He responds, I didn't want to implicate you any further. I don't care, Meg says. The students are dead. One of them died in my arms. You could have at least called me. I'm sorry, Gabe says. Ashley slowly backs away from the two while muttering awkward. Laugh track ensues. Ian's dead, Gabe says. Ian? He's dead. Oh, Jesus. You don't understand. He was my son, goddammit, Meg Patterson cries. My son? I'm sorry, Gabe says. Patterson begins to cry, but quickly wipes her tears away. I'll mourn later. For now, we need to get payback for the monster who did this, Patterson says as she takes out a shotgun from her satchel. Gabe and Ashley nod and just go along with it, knowing it was them who put Ian into the ground. Do you know where he's at, Patterson? The stadium. The stadium is where he's at. Okay, let's go. Yeah, let's. The three make their way towards the parking lot. They notice a couple police cars following. The scene cuts to President Nelson. Unlike what the survivors think, he's not at the stadium but instead at the dorms. He's casually walking through the AMC, blasting unsuspecting students. President Nelson, please! We loved you. Why are you doing this? A wounded girl says. Because you hornets killed my son, Nelson responds, stomping the girl's head to mush. The scene cuts back to the parking lot as Gabe, Ashley, and Meg continue to make their way towards the stadium. Gabe, clutching the dead Ian's handgun, notices the approaching vehicles, knowing what awaits them. Keep walking, Gabe says. Keep walking. Myers whispers the group as they see a set of lights about 100 feet in front of them. Campus police stop both groups and direct them towards the center field. Gabe and Daniel look at each other. They haven't seen each other in hours. Gabe always assumed he was dead. Before they can greet each other, police lay them on the floor and search them. One guard finally speaks. "The president's gonna want to know about this. 5 wanderers, 2 of them are professors. Nelson's not gonna appreciate your disloyalty." "He won't find out," Myers says. "What?" The guard looks confused. Myers reaches into his pocket and pulls out a grenade. He tosses it and it explodes, killing everyone. Meg, Daniel, and Ashley watch in horror. Gabe looks over to Ashley and they share one last warm smile. "Ashley," Gabe says. "Gabe," Ashley says. A tear rolls down Ashley's cheek and her mouth begins to speak, but the words never come out. "Gabe, I love you." "I love you too, Ashley." "And so," Professor Myers says. The group rush toward Myers, who is laying against the concrete, unmoving. An explosion's impact sphere reaches a surface area of 5 cubic feet. I knew if I lowered the explosion toward my lower extremities, I might just live to tell the story. Myers may be alive, but his legs didn't make it. Gabe and Ashley are clearly annoyed, as Myers has ruined their most intimate moment, but the help Myers up. Gabe carries Myers in his arms as they scope out their surrounds. While they have no weapons other than Ian's gun and Daniel's retard strength, they have 3 dead police and their vehicle. "All right," Gabe says. "Let's go." "Wait," Ashley says. "There's still one." "What? Who?" Out from the ashes, one of the officers rises. "All hail, Master Nelson. Shall he cleanse this earth of you abnormalities?" the dying Mexican cop says. The group sees the dying man and wonder what they should do. "Let me deal with him," Daniel says sadly, knowing he'll have to put down one of his own. Daniel rushes the cop, and without hesitation, he grabs the cop by the neck and breaks it. "He's down," Daniel says. Daniel charges his retard energy again. An aura of energy surrounds him, and he absorbs it into his body. The group continues onto the field to look for President Nelson, only to find it empty. He must be elsewhere. Within the wreckage, the group does find something useful. When Nelson was knocked down and had taken damage, a piece of his armor had fallen off. Myers, with his breadth of knowledge, rerouted its power to a nearby wheelchair found in the wreckage. Myers can now hover over surfaces and control its direction with his mind. Nelson's armor is now complete. "Where's the president?" Ashley asks. "Probably in his own bunker," Gabe says. "Well, let's go get him." Myers puts both his hands on his head and begins to see everything. "No! If we follow him to his bunker located in Douglas Hall, it'll be certain death for many of you. I've seen it in my premonitions," Myers cries. "You mean your nightmares?" Ashley says. "No," Myers says. "I've seen something far worse than a nightmare." "Like what?" Gabe asks. "When I went to sleep, I saw... "Spit it out, fool!" Meg Patterson yells. Gabe reaches out to grab Ashley's hand. Nobody knows what he's about to say. Daniel reaches out to Myers' hand for comfort, but is rejected. Myers goes on. I saw a glowing armored figure with nothing but ruins stretching miles in every direction. I saw Douglas Hall with bodies hanged against its walls. I saw myself kneeled beside the feet of the Terror." "The Terror?" Ashley asks. "The Terror," Myers says. "The Terror from beyond." Meg Patterson, in her gnarled and decrepit voice, responds, "We can't just stand here and watch our school be terrorized." Ashley responds, "Well, some of us are standing." Laugh tracks ensue. Gabe rolls his eyes and tightens his grip. Do we really have a choice? Gabe cocks his gun, but Meg Patterson recognizes the gun as her late son's, Ian's. "You know what Ian would think of you," Meg Patterson says. "Yeah," Gabe says. "I know." "You Chinaman," Meg says hatefully to Gabe. Gabe shoots her in the back of the head. "What the hell are you doing?" Ashley yells. "The bitch was begging for it," Gabe says. Ashley doesn't disagree with Gabe, but she disagrees with the violence that Gabe has done. Ashley doesn't believe in killing, even in Nazis. "We should leave her body here," Ashley says. "No," Gabe says, "that's too good for her." Gabe shoots her body 19 more times, turning her body into mush. Gabe throws her dead body into a dumpster filled with dead bodies, and the group continues to walk to Douglas Hall. The group arrives at Douglas Hall to find it ruined. There is a glowing light emanating from the last remaining room surrounding mountains of rubble. The four approach the building and recognize they are clearly outmatched. They'd have to trick Nelson somehow if they wanted even a chance of entering the building. Gabe yells out to Daniel, "I killed Meg Patterson. That racist bitch started all of this when she planted hornets in some dead guy's car." "Good for you," Daniel says. "She should have been the first one to die." "I agree," Daniel says. Myers shushes the two. "I think I have a better plan than this nonsense." "What's your plan?" Gabe asks. "In some circles it's called classical conditioning, but back in my day it was called being a manipulative little fuck," Myers says. "What does that mean?" Gabe asks. Myers reaches into his pocket and takes out $3,500 labeled tuition money. "This'll lure this little fucker," Myers says. He places it on the ground and the group hides. After 30 minutes, Nelson comes flying out of nowhere to pick up the cash. "Get him!" Gabe screams. "I'm trying," Myers says. Just then, a figure appears from the shadows. Out from the bushes appears Professor Miguel Cayo. He is elfish in stature, but stocky and conniving. The group is trying their hardest to keep Nelson down when Cayo approaches the group and laughs. "The terror hasn't done it alone. Back in 1998, I lost my wife to a nest of Brazilian hornets. I've been whispering evil thoughts to the president ever since." Cayo has gloves powered through pure hornet energy. He has been training for years for a moment like this. He points his gloves toward Gabe. "Shit!" Gabe screams. Gabe is paralyzed as Cayo pulls off his mask. It is revealed that under his mask is nothing but a skull. The skull laughs. "Fight me if you dare, fucker!" Cayo laughs. Gabe readies his fists for fisticuffs. Cayo readies himself. Gabe punches Cayo in the fingers. "Ouch!" Cayo screams in pain. "You broke my fingers!" Gabe laughs. "I'll kill you!" Cayo screams. "No!" Gabe throws a devastating combo towards his chest, sending him back a few feet. Gabe takes a chance to mock the small professor by teabagging him. "Stand up, Cayo! Oh, wait, it wouldn't make much of a difference." Miguel Cayo grabs Gabe's leg and twists it till Gabe hits the floor. Ashley, out of pure instinct, jumps between the two to protect who she loves most. She is not equipped to fit and takes 3 direct blows to the face. Cayo is winding up for a devastating blow when Daniel holds his hand back. He feels his energy flowing stronger than ever before. "I think you should leave now," Daniel says. "You think?" Cayo says. "Yes," Daniel says. Daniel squeezes his hand, destroying every bone in Cayo's hand. Every bone has turned to dust within Cayo's body. He lets out a scream, but Gabe covers his mouth. "Hush, my boy, this is not all that you must endure," Gabe says. He looks at Daniel and nods. Daniel rips off Cayo's arm with his retard strength. "You piece of shit!" Cayo screams. "And you?" Daniel says. Cayo begins to poop himself. "You?" Daniel says. Daniel takes a deep breath. "You?" Daniel's energy explodes from his mouth and into Cayo. Cayo is completely mangled by the energy blast. His arms and legs are ripped from his body. He has blood coming from everywhere. Gabe hands Daniel a lighter. "Patch him up." Daniel burns Chow's exposed ends till the skin mends and the bleeding stops. Gabe takes the opportunity to tend to Ashley. "Are you okay?" he asks. Ashley rests in his arms and says with a weak voice, "Who, me? It's just a scratch." Laugh tracks ensue. As the two share in their moment, Daniel begins to question Cayo. "What do you know about the suit? Where's the power source?" "Are you sure you want to know?" he responds. "Yes, I'm sure," Daniel says. "It's in the belly of the beast," Cayo whispers. "The president?" Daniel asks. "Yes, the president has a weakness deep inside him," Cayo says weakly. Daniel grabs the tiny man by the throat. "I don't like your riddles, cuck. What is his weakness?" Cayo weakly grabs at his throat but realizes the only way to breathe again is to tell Daniel the truth. "It's his dick." "His dick?" Daniel asks. "Yes, his dick," Cayo says. "His dick is his weakness?" Daniel asks. "Yes," Cayo says. Cayo takes out the blueprints of Nelson's armor, revealing that his armor is weaker at the dick. "He can't fuck with it on." "We'll see about that," Daniel says. "When?" Gabe asks. "Tomorrow." Gabe laughs. "He won't know what hit him." Ashley lovingly interrupts, responding, "No, he won't see it coming." Everyone laughs and laugh tracks ensue. Daniel presses against Chow one last time. How can we get closet to the president's dick? Chow laughs. Ask Nifsend, she's been good at it for years. Daniel readies his fist, filled with rage, but before he lands a blow, another shot lands from a distance, decapitating Kaio. Daniel sees a hooded figure in the shadows. Let's go, Daniel says. No, Gabe says. I'm not leaving without Ashley. The hooded figure appears before all of them. Gabe holds on to Ashley. Daniel says subornedly, my sister. The hooded figure steps forward. Daniel recognizes her. You, he says. Gabe stands between the monster and Diana. No! Diana screams. Daniel is being consumed by the anger. He is losing sense of his surroundings. Daniel has protected the group from so much danger, yet he can no longer protect them when the threat is himself. The group look at each other. They may not agree with Diana's actions, but they have a common threat now. Should they end Daniel's life? Just as the group look at each other, Daniel, who is 9 feet tall and jacked AF, snatches Myers from his wheelchair. What did that EMP mean when he said that Nifsend fucked the president? Myers begins to laugh uncontrollably. Myers, being the silly fuck he is, says, Daniel, you don't remember me, do you? I've told you before, I am a Jew, a fucking Jew. This Jew has done nothing wrong. This Jew has nothing to repent. I am a fucking Jew. I pay Israeli taxes. I have Israeli citizenship. I vote Israeli. This Jew has been persecuting you for centuries. Daniel loosens his grip and Myers falls to the ground. What the fuck are you talking about? Jews are evil. Jews are the devil. Jews are the worst. Kanye taught me they were conspiring to... Myers begins to pull at his own hair. You know, Daniel, you're really starting to piss me off. I don't talk to Satanists. Myers continues to bitch at Daniel, who is clearly no longer listening to the poor old man. Because of this, he doesn't notice that with each complaint, he doesn't see that Myers' skull is increasing in size with hate. Myers begins to go on an all-knowing rant on minorities. Mexicans, blacks, women, gays, Muslims, Jews, Arabs, Arab Muslims, Mexican Muslims, Arab Mexicans, white Mexican whites, black whites, women whites, Arabs whites, Arab Christians, Arab Muslim Christians, Arab Mexican Christians, Mexican Muslim Christians, Mexican Muslim Christians, Arab Mexican 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 Christians, Mexicans, blacks, gays, Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, Mohammedans, Jehovah's Witnesses, Jews. Myers' skull now contains all its hate. It is 3 feet wide. Myers' head explodes. His limp body falls as Daniel recoils. The whole group screams in shock. Ashley finally speaks up. Brain blast? Yeah, I bet. Laugh tracks ensue. Daniel faces the rest of the group. I've had enough of this bullshit. I will be stopping this madness today. I will begin my mission. The only thing good in my life. I will put an end to this Jew scum once and for all. Everyone is sure that President Nelson is not Jewish, but no one wants to dissuade the kind of energy Daniel had. Diana once again cocks her bow and aims it directly at the retard anti-Semitic Daniel. Daniel looks to his sister and says, if not for me, do it for Christoph. Diana raises her bow. Diana fires an arrow at Daniel. Daniel falls to the floor, bleeding but alive. Daniel looks up at Diana and says, good sister, you are my only hope. Diana does not move. She is smiling. Diana? Diana is not smiling anymore. She answers, your best hope is me. Diana, what have you done? Help me. You interrupted me. She continues, your best hope is me. So you have no hope. You died the day you accepted temptation. Daniel, I'm only finishing the job. You can't kill me. A prophecy foretold to Myers that I would save the school. Diana tightens her grip. That prophecy was fake. That hope was fake. The arrows were real. Daniel is horrified. What if she's right? What if the prophecy was fake and he was nothing but a weak retard? Daniel begins to cry. His cry becomes wailing. He screams into the sky, God, do not forsake me! Suddenly, Daniel begins to feel Diana's life force begin to fade from her body, but he doesn't take notice. Or maybe he doesn't allow himself to focus on the fact that his sister's energy is fading from reality and powering him. Minutes go by and Daniel begins to swell with more power than he's ever had. He looks at his hand where his sister once was, but all there is a husk of skin that once was Diana. Daniel has successfully reached a new form which he called the Devourer. Daniel's new form begins to emanate a light so bright it can only be called the sun. Daniel's body began to undergo strange changes. Gabe and Ashley approached their friend roommate. "Daniel, are you all right?" I think so. You look different. I don't even remember being here." Daniel lays his hand on Gabe's shoulder, and the clothes on Gabe's shoulder turns to ash. They both look on at Daniel's new power in astonishment. Daniel turns his head to face Diana's carcass. The tiny sliver of life force left in it emanates from it as darkness. "My first real power. My first—" Daniel begins to pet the husk that used to be his sister. "My first—" Daniel then realizes his sister has been gone. He sits on the floor, still engorged in power. He can't hold it anymore. He lets out an enormous, terrifying scream. The light from his body intensifies, causing the whole room to shake. Daniel stands up and roars, "I fucking hate Jews!" His scream grows and his body begins to engorge with a color. The room shakes. Gabe and Ashley come up to him and begin to calm him down. Gabe says to Daniel jokingly, "You should hate fags." "Fuck you, faggot." "Oops, that's not what I meant." "I'll kill you." "Heh, I'm safe. You're too weak right now." "Don't fuck with me, faggot. You're next." "Wow, you've really gone psycho." Daniel starts to laugh. Then Gabe starts to laugh. They laugh at the absurdity of what they were saying. It was a good indication that Daniel was back to normal. "You're back. I was worried." "Sorry, I was just—" "Don't worry about it." I love you, Gabe." Daniel powers down his devourer power and turns back into his regular form. Gabe looks on at his friend and smiles. "Yeah, I know." Gabe and Ashley start to walk forward towards the door of Douglas Hall. "There must be something here. Let's look for clues," Gabe says. The three of them look around till Ashley finds a still-standing podium. She tips it over, revealing a secret passage that begins below its base. The group wonders what's on the other side. There's a stairwell that leads into darkness. There's only enough room for one person to crawl in at a time. Daniel chimes in, "Who's going in first?" Ashley says, "Not ladies first," and laugh tracks ensue. Daniel begins the crawl and Gabe follows behind. Ashley, who was too scared to enter, waits at the entrance. Gabe worries about her. The only person she's killed was Ian, a total pussy. He hopes she can fend for herself while he's gone. As Daniel and Gabe make their way through the tunnel, a hatch appears with lights springing from the other side. As they push through, they stumble into a brightly lit classroom-sized lounge. This classroom was retrofitted with a bed, a swimming pool, and a toilet that rests over a stacks of loan money and tuition statements. On the wall is a sign reading Classroom 5, Swimming Pool and Money Room. Gabe looks around. "This must be Nelson's room," Gabe says. Daniel is quiet. He's seething with anger. How could he mumbles. "What was that?" Gabe asks. Daniel's devourer energy begins to grow from within him. The sun begins to radiate from his chest. "Daniel, you need to calm down, fucker," Gabe yells. Daniel begins to draw back his power. He is astonished at what he just experienced. "I'm sorry. I don't know what that was. I'm not used to this new power," he tells Gabe. Daniel sits down on Nelson's couch made of $100 bills. "That's okay, man. Just promise me that you won't do it again." "Okay, I promise." Gabe walks to Daniel and puts his arm around him. "Thank you. You're welcome. You saved my ass. I owe you one. You owe me 3. They both laugh. "All right," Gabe says. "Where to now?" "I don't know. We have to find a way to stop Nelson from killing more innocent people." "Yeah, I know. I don't know if I can do it." "You have to," Gabe says to Daniel. "I don't know, man. I just don't know. He's going to kill thousands of people." "He's killing even more now, Daniel, and we can't let him." "I know. You're right. We have to stop him." "That's the spirit," Gabe says. The two of them stand and walk out the room, towards the pool. "Yeah." Gabe notices the pool has heavy waves that swell and crash against the platform surrounding it. He deduces that it must be part of a larger body of water. He must be siphoning it from the American River, furthering the drought which has caused the end of thousands of local wildlife species. Above the roaring pool, there is a sparkling plaque listing the names of the construction workers who died while completing the project. Each name is crossed out with title of the plaque labeled "Stupid Fucktards." As they continue to scope the room, the water begins to swell like never before. The two hide behind the Master King bed as a wave surges up into the sky. Nelson bursts into the room. He has Ashley's necklace in his hand. He tosses it aside, removes his mask, and jumps back into the pool. "All right, this is it," Gabe yells. "Yes, finally." Gabe reaches into his pocket and takes out Ian's gun. He aims it at the pool, waiting for Nelson to come out. Nelson springs out. Gabe gets a few shots off, but it's deflected on the Hornet Amore. Nelson lands on top of Gabe, breaking his chest. "How do you like that, weak student?" Gabe cries out. "What did you do to Ashley?" "Oh, she's alive," Nelson says, "but she ain't no she-wolf anymore." Nelson kneels down in front of Gabe. He reaches into his bag and takes out Ashley's skin. "She was growing so fast," Nelson says. "I had to seal her in." "You killed her." "Oh no, she lives, and she's had quite the growth spurt." "No," Gabe says. "She's dead." "Ain't no body," Nelson says. "Smells like burnt flesh." "She's dead," Gabe repeats. Nelson reaches into his bag one more time and takes out Ashley's spine. Gabe lunges at Nelson, tackling him. They roll around the ceiling. Nelson kicks Gabe and he flies across the carpet. Nelson stands and hits Gabe in the chest with a powered-up uppercut. Gabe rolls across the room until he hits the jacuzzi. He stands up and looks over to Nelson. "You'll never kill me. Not what I represent. I represent the lives of every student on this campus. I am the embodiment of the Sacramentian State experience. I am Sacramentian State," Gabe says. His fists begin to emanate a green aura, an aura that only exists in the truest of Hornets. He charges his fist for a final attack on Nelson's armor. "This is for Sacramentian State! This is for Sacramentian State!" The two charge each other. They collide and go through the wall. They fall through a series of banisters and banisters. They land on the other side of the building. Nelson knocks Gabe out. He removes his mask and trudges away. Nelson steps on Gabe's chest. He points an energy blast straight at Daniel. The Devourer concedes and raises his hands up. Nelson looks into Gabe's eyes. They are closed shut. He's willing to wait till the young man wakes up. He has some questions to ask him. As Gabe slowly reaches consciousness, Nelson finally speaks. "What were my son's last words?" Gabe opens his eyes and sees Nelson above him. "What were my son's last words?" Gabe tells him. He said, "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry you failed me." Nelson fires his energy blast straight at Gabe. He screams out, "No!" The blast goes off and destroys everything in its path. The blast goes through the downstairs hallway, the kitchen, and living room. It passes through the walls of the house. Gabe is blown away. The blast goes into the swimming pool. The blast destroys the water and all the decorations. It goes out into the night air. Nelson watches everything around him explodes into a giant fireball. Luckily, his armor keeps him safe from harm. The flames rush towards him, but Nelson barely notices. He looks up into the sky. "Father," Nelson whispers. "What have you done?" a voice calls out. Nelson looks down. "This isn't what I wanted, Father." "I'm sorry, son," the masked figure says. "I did what I had to do," Nelson says. "You can't leave now," the voice says. "I can, and you will, but not until you've completed your quest." "My father," Nelson says. "Yes," the figure says. "He was the greatest man I've ever known, and he never lost sight of what was important in life. He made me promise him that I would kill every evil man in the world. I swore to him that I would." Nelson, fully believing that the being he was talking to God, says to him, "He was right, Father. We must fight evil. We must crush it. We must do it forever. We must do it for everyone. But most of all, we must do it for the ones we love, for that is what your father would have wanted." Nelson says to his father, "I will." The voice says, "You must." Gabe and Daniel glance at each other. They've been watching this unfold and aren't sure what to make of it yet. It was at that moment that President Nelson began to cry. He sees the cloud take shape to the form of that whom he loved most. The cloud shifted left and right until it assumed the silhouette of Dr. Casey Nifsend. "You will be a good servant, won't you, Nelsie Poo?" President Nelson, much like Daniel, was consumed by Nifsend's dominating energy. Nelson believed she was God and seducing him from the afterlife. "Why won't you fuck me?" the cloud whispered from beyond. Nelson cowered in shame. It was at that moment that the two remembered that the president's weakness was his dick. They originally thought it was a sick and twisted joke. None of knew if it would work. "Please," the president begged. Daniel prepares himself by transforming into his devourer form. His devourer form gave him the appearance of a hybrid creature, half man, half monster. He drew his energy blade. "You will come to me, Nelsie Poo. You will come to Daddy." Nelson, fully hallucinating, can't tell reality from fiction. Daniel takes the opportunity to slice at Nelson. The blade bisects him, or so it appears. The president begins laughing as the blade cuts through him. He kneels on the ground and stares at Daniel. "What? Have you lost your fucking mind?" Nelson turns to smoke. Daniel realizes that he must have been poisoned and is hallucinating. The smoke wafts towards Daniel. Daniel raises his arm and blocks the smoke. Nelson laughs and says, "You stupid fool." The smoke billows around Daniel's head. "Motherfucker!" Daniel shouts. The smoke begins to get into Daniel's eyes. Daniel loses his grip on the energy blade. The smoke engulfs Daniel. The devourer falls to the ground. "You will," Nelson says. Daniel continues to shout obscenities. The smoke begins to enter Daniel's nostrils. Daniel begins to cough. The smoke begins to choke Daniel. "You will sit still, cuck." The smoke engulfs Daniel. Gabe is watching a few feet away, watching everything unfold. Gabe is unable to move his body. Daniel begins to scream as the terror smoke begins to enter his body. But is his body really smoke? Gabe, witnessing everything from an outside perspective, sees that Nelson is not smoke, but a living, breathing man in a suit of armor who was trying to enter Daniel's body to increase his power. Nelson was determined to have Daniel's devourer transformation within himself. With it, he could take over the entire schooling system in California. He would rule with an iron fist. Daniel, being force-fed by Nelson's evil energy, begins to transform. Nelson is ecstatic. He is seeing his dream come true. Daniel finally begins to become scaly, his body forming spikes all over. Gabe watches in horror. Daniel roars. Gabe is able to see through the smoke Daniel's transformation. Gabe lets out a scream. Daniel is fully transformed into his devourer form. "You!" The devourer is Godzilla-like. He expands until he is 46 feet tall and his voice shakes the floor beneath them. President Nelson is controlling the retarded devourer. The smoke, which is still just Nelson in human form, pulls the scales Ratatouille style towards the broken Gabriel. Gabe is terrified. The devourer roars again. Gabe screams. The devourer launches a strike at Gabe. Gabe rolls out just in time. "It's only a matter of time before you fall to my might." Nelson laughs as he rides the devourer. Gabe dodges a few more blasts before he notices Daniel's energy blade on the ground. He dives for it. The devourer launches another attack. Before it can land, Gabe lifts up the sword, completely blocking the attack. The devourer roars again. Gabe has the strength to lift the devourer and toss him. The devourer lands directly on top of Nelson. The devourer slowly gets back up. Nelson is now on the ground. Daniel, now the smoke, drift away, and he slowly sees Nelson's true form return. He lays on the floor, wounded. Daniel shouts to Gabe, "Get him in the dick, boy!" Gabe is now able to use his boy strength to lift Nelson with ease. "You!" Nelson groans. Nelson powers his suit in time, and the two fly up, crashing on the ledge of the balcony. "You can't kill a sitting president!" Gabe, holding onto the blade in one hand and Nelson in the other, says, "Looks like this president is going to have to set a term limit." Gabe stabs Nelson right in the chest. He misses the heart, but Nelson is still in extreme pain. Nelson throws Gabe off of him, and Gabe begins to free fall down to the ground. Nelson begins to recuperate. "No, you're not getting away this time." Gabe takes out Ian's gun mid-fall. He takes aim toward Nelson. "This is for everyone you've killed. This is for my friends you killed. This is for the professors I've lost. This is for Sacramentian State." Gabe fires off a shot. The bullet, infused with Hornet energy, lands directly at the center of Nelson's armor, right on the battery. The battery begins to emanate a bright light. "No, you bastard! What have you done?" Nelson cries as his armor gets closer and closer to detonation. "This is for Sacramentian State," Gabe repeats. The armor explodes. Nelson falls to the ground. The explosion throws Gabe back. "No, Gabe," Daniel says, returning to his human form. He is taken aback at the sight of his friend's sacrifice. "Why?" Gabe has his back against the wall of the library. He slowly regains consciousness. Daniel rushes toward him and embraces him. "I got your back," Gabe says. "I can never repay you for saving my life." Daniel helps Gabe up as the two begin to search for Nelson. The energy blade is recovered. The two know a feeble and weakened Nelson is roaming the school somewhere. It's only a matter of time before this is over. Gabe and Daniel slowly walk back towards Douglas, hoping that Nelson was too hurt to travel. As they walk, they stare at the wasteland that was once a bright and vibrant university. They somberly recall memories of places and people where only rocks and bodies remain. Gabe and Daniel are back in Douglas. The two of them search the ruins, calling out for Nelson. Gabe and Daniel turn to their left. They see Nelson limping down the hallway, all bloodied and bruised. Nelson's face is green, pale green and gashed. Nelson hobbles towards a partially destroyed podium. "It's over, Nelson. Surrender now so no one else has to die," Daniel says. Nelson weakly smiles. "Foolish boy, someone always has to die." Nelson presses a button under the podium and the ground begins to shake. Gabe and Daniel try to maintain their balance as the earth shakes beneath them. Out of the ground bursts 6 figures, all grotesque and covered in slime. They are the mutants that Nelson had kept beneath Douglas. The grotesque figures turn and look at the two men, all of them resembling Nelson but with severe deformities. "You may have killed my son, but I have other children," Nelson says. The 6 creatures grotesquely move towards Gabe and Daniel. "This is for our father," one of the figures say. "Gabez ado," another figure says. "Nix on the thick," one of them says. Gabe and Daniel try to fight back, but quickly realize that this was not a good position to be in. One of them bites Gabe in the arm, taking a chunk out of him. Daniel slices the creature in half with the energy blade, but much to his dismay, it begins to reform by reattaching itself to its other half. "You should never interfered." Nelson starts to chuckle as he is surrounded by his deformed children. "You're not even fit to fight me. I'm the father of the mutants. You should know better than to mess with me." Nelson lowers his arms. The mutant children climb onto his shoulders and meld into a single continuous form. The terror that was once clad in green and gold armor is now engulfed by a dense and powerful slime. Gabe readies his fists once more, fully prepared for another fight. "Nelson, you coward! Fight me like a man!" The slime lunge toward him and completely envelop his left arm. He swings with his right, only for the other arm to bury beneath the mass of sludge. The sludge laughs as if creeps through more and more of Gabe's body. Daniel begins recklessly slicing into the blob, but his energy is a waste of time as every swing only results in the form regrowing itself. Gabe looks on as the slime completely envelops him. He quickly begins to choke and suffocate. He tries to strike the slime, but only causes it to enfold him even more. He holds his chin up towards the sky and gasps for breath. As anger and desperation begin building up in Daniel, he pleads with his body to transform into his powerful devourer state. Nothing. His body refuses to transform. Gabe slowly begins to asphyxiate, his eyes slowly close. As he does, his mind flashes back to memories of him and Daniel. Just 2 young men excited to take on the world. How did this all get so fucked up? Daniel begins to cry. The sky mocks Daniel as rain droplets cover the floor. Why couldn't he enter devourer mode? Nelson must have been right. Nifsend must have been right. His sister must have been right. He's nothing now but a sad, broken retard. As he cries harder, the sky drops hail. Daniel wails uncontrollably as the weather intensifies around him. It grows stronger as Daniel wails. Lightning strikes hit the ground and the earth begins to lift around them. Daniel is no longer a being, but something else. His energy goes beyond his body and shudders with the climate around them. His entire body becomes a whirlwind. He rips and tears his way through the hail and does his best to whip the hail. The hail crush against themselves and form into a solid rock. The sun and moon are replaced with 2 flaming red eyes. Daniel's mouth opens, but a voice emanates from the sky and says, "You have awoken the chaos." Daniel becomes weather itself. Nelson is astonished but tries to not be shaken. He squeezes Gabe hard. "Calm down, Daniel, or your friend dies." There is no response. Daniel is no longer the mortal man he once was. He is the chaos, the devourer's true form. The chaos begins to fire off giant chunks of hail and lightning towards Nelson, each blow breaking off a chunk of the president. Stop, please! I'm the president of Sacramentian State. I can give you so much. I can give you a full-ride education. I can give you first pick for all your classes. I can give you the perfect GPA. Please, just stop! Nelson cries as bits of him are ripped off by Daniel's immense power. Daniel screams in anger. His rage in this state grows, triggering his most powerful attack. Daniel throws his hands forward. "You can't defeat this body!" Nelson yells. Daniel's hand emits the sun power, shooting off fire over 1,000,000 degrees Kelvin. Nelson's head explodes. Gabe gasps for air. "Daniel!" Daniel stops himself. He lowers his arms and begins to notice his surroundings. He looks down to see that Gabe is still alive. Daniel immediately realizes that is weak and has no control over his body. He leans down and embraces Gabe. "Thank God," Gabe says. "Sorry I didn't act sooner," Daniel says. "All that matters is we're alive." "What just happened?" "You did it, man! You killed Nelson! You avenged everyone!" Gabe says joyfully. Daniel smiles, but a tear rolls down his cheek. "I'm glad, but I just wish we were able to save everyone. Nelson shouldn't have done this. I never wanted to kill him." "I know, man. Let's just get out of here." "Yeah." They stand up. Daniel walks over to Gabe and lifts him up. Daniel uses his strength to carry Gabe out of Douglas Hall. As they exit the building, they see a large crowd of students waiting for them. "Hey, guys," one of them says. "You did it. You guys saved us," another one of them says joyfully. "It was you," another student says. "You showed us we were never alone," another student says. "We wanted to thank you for what you did," another student says. "You are heroes to us." Daniel cries as people come to him and tell them how they would have died without them intervening. As crowds surround Gabe and Daniel, the two finally breathe a sigh of relief. The terror was gone, and there were students alive to tell the story. As days progressed, the board of the university were tried by a panel of students. Members who aligned and colluded with Nelson's evil empire were promptly executed with the very energy blade that once defended the school. Those who remained pledged to reconstruct the school with students' well-being as their priority. Long gone were the days of Nelson's profit-hungry exploits. Buildings were reconstructed, and memorials were placed across campus to commemorate fallen students. On a frame sitting above Douglas Hall, a plaque signed by Gabriel reads simply, "For Ashley." A statue of the now-dead Myers honorably kneels beside the door's entrance. Daniel and Gabe chose to omit his racist remarks. As time passed, the two returned to their psychology classes. They may have been through so much, but they still had a rich and full lives left to live. While so many of their loved ones were no longer around, their memories prevailed. There were also hundreds of surviving students whose names and faces now meant the world to them. Daniel and Gabe would soon graduate, but their story lived on. The history and memories of the terror live on as well. As Daniel and Gabe study for their final psychology exam, they realize that all these stories taught them something. They learned that each life mattered. The end.